Good evening and welcome to this edition of DeFacto Review, a weekly roundup of the biggest stories shaping Mongolia. Here with us tonight is our commentator and economist, Jargat of DeFacto.
Good evening.
And my name is Dilkon. We are live on Facebook at V Television, and we want to hear your thoughts, and so send us your comments on Twitter with hashtag Jargat_DeFacto. Coming up on the program, government involvement in business. Interfering in civic society's voice. Who will favor amendments to the General Administrative Law? So our first topic of the night is, in recent news, it was reported that there were evidence of parliament members, government officials providing discounted loans from the Small Medium Enterprise Fund, SME Fund, to their own companies. So do you think this is fair?
Of course not. And this is just the tip of iceberg. Because this fight between two opposition party, the minority in parliament and majority, these facts are coming up now. But this was happening always before. I was raising about this issue already maybe 5-6 years ago. What happened was Minister of Transport and Development, Mr. Sadbatar, got to company of his wife 1.2 billion tugriks. And Minister of Food and Agriculture and Light Industry, Mr. Batsar, got also in the same way 1.4 billion tugriks, etc., etc. Another parliament member, our ministers are also parliament members. And another parliament member, Balor Cholon, got 950 million tugriks to his own company, the flour mill company, etc., etc. Many parliament members' names appeared in the news last week. And what is this small medium enterprise fund in Mongolia? It had started as early as 1993. There was a food program assistance from the US in which they suggested the proceeds from selling those, that time was oil, it was, I think, oil for cooking oil, etc. And those things, proceeds from the sale of those products come as assistance from the US. Those money goes to supporting fund for small medium enterprises, which small medium, in almost all countries, small medium enterprises are the backbone of their economy. In Mongolia is also. So for that purpose, later on we start to separate every year some money from a budget. 2016, for example, 56 billion tugriks, or $22 million at the current exchange rate. 2017, 50 billion or $20 million. 2018, 65, which is $26 million a year. And out of all this money, majority of the politicians are receiving to their own company, it is not fair at all. At the time, why it is not fair? Because this loan from budget has a 5-year term and very much discounted the rate, only 3% a year, compared with 24% a year from the commercial bank, 7 times less. And then the grassroots period of payment is 12 months, and then this one is only in tugriks in our currency, and up to 2 billion for one company. So with this such different conditions, the politicians get loaned for themselves. Of course, it's unacceptable. And by the way, it was always like this. Here and there, we have received, the media was just sometimes informing about that, but slowly, like many things related to politicians in Mongolia, from the media disappearing shortly. But this time, hopefully, it is not. But however, it is raising a lot of issues for particularly those who want to have this loan.
And so, in most cases, this would be a cause for political careers ending in most countries. However, this hasn't been really the case in Mongolia. So do you think these politicians will pay the money back, or what will happen with them? Happen to them?
Unfortunately, I'm not sure whether they will have any responsibility taken. I'm not sure because Mongolian government is parliament, all consisting of Democratic Party and People's Party. And both parties were misusing our funds, lands, properties that belong to the people. And they're only in the cases where the one is, if needed, then they put the issues like this open. So there are many other issues we don't know yet answer. For example, we don't know how much politicians were using for their own company the proceeds from the bond, Chinggis Khan bond, $1.5 billion US. We have paid, we start to pay from the next year one, and etc. etc. And they are always misusing our fund. And one, secondly, of course, in normal country you expect them being responsible for this wrongdoing. But unfortunately, it will not be probably. Plus, also, once the loan is given for 5 years to these parliamentarians' relatives, it's harder to revoke it because maybe it's already used. So they have. We need to wait until they pay on time. But however, we should increase the people's scrutiny on this use of these funds.
And so this news has been covered in the media for the past week. However, there hasn't been any actions or comments made from like the judicial side.
That's the problem. Judicial side cannot raise a hand or talk about that until it is a court case. So probably the citizens, in particular those businesses of small medium enterprises who tried many times these loans and got answer only no, and if they put the case to the court, then our judiciary system may raise. But overall, now it is an issue of how much the Mongolian state is in the business. And wherever the state is in the business, this sort of a misuse of funds, mismanagement is always happening. And we keep writing, keep talking about this, but no serious, tangible or substantial measures were taken. The reason is Mongolian, though we kind of build up new society called free market democratic society, where we mean things should be on a free market basis. But when Mongolian states create state-owned companies, shortly it is becoming not state-owned companies, but party-owns companies. Or after any political change, they put their own people in the helm of these companies, and they misuse their fund. And almost all Mongolian state-owned enterprises are working with laws in the balance or with the rate balance, and all this loss is paid from the budget, from the money which otherwise could go to a lot of social needs we need in the country. We need a lot of schools to build in order to have 3 shifts in schools. At night, the kids go to schools at night in Ulaanbaatar city. In the countryside, they are only a class with 5 children. So all these inequalities, all these issues can be solved from the money, which otherwise goes to cover the costs of losses of the state-owned companies. In general, Mongolia is not implementing the main principles of the free market. First, the state role in economy is just to protect our safety, our property, and our right. Yet they are doing many things which otherwise can be done by the private sector. Take all these power stations, take Mongolian Airlines, take Mongolian Railways. All those companies should be immediately privatized through stock exchange. And Mongolian citizens should own 60% of those properties, companies, so that we have a more public, more good governance. We have more voices in the management. Otherwise, the politicians go there and they make the companies with the laws, and this is the problem. And the very bad result of this too much state involvement is starving of surviving of the private sector. Mm-hmm. Private sector cannot compete with the company of your minister. Mm-hmm. So this company is slowly taking out itself from the market. Mm-hmm. And because the people lost their jobs, many Mongols go to Korea to find better jobs, more stable salaries. So it's very, very bad situation. And yet Mongolia, the state is becoming into more and more foreign debt. And they say that we paid this debt, but actually they don't pay the debt. They paid all the debt with a new debt, mm-hmm. with new borrowing, with more expensive interest rates, more longer terms of payment, so that next, or if possible, even then the one after next, pay the bill. Mm-hmm. So is creating such a situation. We have a lot of devaluation of Mongolian to Greeks, etc. Mm-hmm. And the other thing I want to add is, look at the ministers received almost 1 billion to Greeks to their own company. Why? I think it is because they have donated about $1 billion to Greeks to their political parties, mm-hmm. and it is kind of a reward for their donation to their political party. Mm-hmm. The reward doesn't say that you don't pay back, but it gives a lot of advantage with this complete 7 times discounted rate and mm-hmm. longer term of payment. So it is really not a level playing field mm-hmm. for businesses, and that's why this country's economy is always staying in the crisis.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, in addition to the SME funds, there are other funds for Social Security as well as disaster relief for livestock. So what should the government's involvement be in businesses as well as the economy?
Well, those funds, we have a lot of funds. Yes. I am sure the situation is the same as this small medium enterprises mm-hmm. fund. They are being misused, they are already, and we even in media there were certain cases where politically connected people, for example, only 2-3 companies have a monopoly right to import vaccines, for example. Mm-hmm. And nobody is making sure that those vaccines are good and they have efficient impact on the market, on the mm-hmm. health of the animals. So all these funds, whatever the state creates, should have independent audit every year, and that report must be on their website. Mm-hmm. This SME fund website has no information about the budget, for example, who got it and how, what is the level of repayment of the previous funds, etc. So there are the sort of channels where our money is siphoning by these people who is politically connected, even though just politically high-ranking officials who makes decisions. Mm-hmm. And it's very unfortunate, and unfortunately it's true picture, and we see that now. The issue is now, what shall we do with that now?
Mm-hmm. And so moving on to our second topic of the night was the draft law on the NGO prepared by the Ministry of Justice as well as Internal Affairs, which was submitted to Parliament recently. So lawmakers have said that non-governmental organizations are losing sight of their core responsibilities as well as duties due to mixture of politics, business, and religion. So technically, NGOs will be prohibited from conducting political activities. So what is the goal behind this draft law?
Well, this is number 4th or 5th attempt mm-hmm. to amend this law of NGO, which originally was created in 1994. Mm-hmm. Since that it is not changed, they cannot be changed because who must change? Those politicians, parliamentarians? They are having the largest number of non-political organizations than anybody else. Mm-hmm. Why? Because through these NGOs, they have their own agenda, they have their own, the media, they own it, NGO, they also own it. And how they can be non-political organization if it is owned or organized or chaired or run by the politicians themselves. Mm-hmm. We have in the country some 20,000 or so about NGOs, mm-hmm. and half of them is not active. Those which is active, only 8,000 are more serious active, but not all of them disclose their financing, and they should disclose their financing report. And also there are religious organizations working under the name of NGO as well. Several organizations, they are working with the religious beliefs of the people. It is not certainly not a non-governmental organization. It's a religious organization. It should be different. It should make differentiation between them. But also through these organizations, they say those who made a draft say that there are organizations, NGOs, which is promoting violence, extremism, terrorism. Kind of initially it goes in that way. So under the name of combating this sort of misdoing or against safety and security of the country, on the other hand, should not cut everybody's NGOs. So it's a very delicate issue to make clear. The relations with the state, with the government.
And it is also said that the true NGOs that have no political influences will be financed by the government. Wouldn't this be kind of a step backwards in that the corruption cases may arise from this, people cannot speak out?
It could be if we have mismanaged the situation. For example, Democratic Party has own youth organization, youth union, women union, and also they have student union, for example, and People's Party has the same. So these unions work as a political party. If they are working as a political party, they should not have a status of NGO. So what the draft suggests is those status will be taken away. What does this status make? They can have a bank account, and they can run as independent organizations, and people must stay confused which one is political parties, younger members or older members. So now it is an issue in Mongolia to make very clear who are the NGOs, what are the NGOs, and what the principal concept of NGOs. In Germany, for example, the NGOs have only two forms. One is foundations, the other is unions, associations. In the associations, you work for the interests of your members, right? You defend the interests of your members. Here, you raise fund, but you should explain where the fund's coming from. And the use of the fund is for non-political, non-profit purposes. So we don't have not yet clear in Mongolia that concept of NGOs. As a result, we have so many NGOs run by politicians. A very clear example, for example, sport associations. Every type of sport has two associations, depending on to which political party head or financier or whoever is the most influential politicians are in the head of the organizations. And there were very confusing cases for international sport unions, associations to accept Mongolians. Which one is saying we are both official? Which one is to send the sportsmen to their competition, tournament? So it will touch a lot of people's interests. I think also several thousands people's jobs. So it is a time to make very clear, but in a very delicate way, so that we don't have more influence of political organizations for non-political organizations.
And so under the draft law, political activities are prohibited, as mentioned before, but club activities are allowed. So isn't this essentially the same thing as before? But
no. If these youth organizations or women organization affiliated to the political party, if they have a status of not NGO or club, it makes differences because as soon as you are NGO, you are officially protected by the law, and you need to declare your financial report, and also you have own bank account through which you can raise fund. In some organizations are doing business activities through this kind of freedom. If you are club, you are not legal entity. You're just a group of people who have the same interest, like, you know, those people who say, two drinkers go. Kind of this sort of status. And it's one of the way to try the organization is more transparent and exactly they serve the society in better way. And with this token also they talk about the religion again. So for example, an issue is in Mongolia now you cannot say, they do that, but you cannot specify particular religion as the majority religion or the most important religion. Now Buddhism, if it is regarded like this, the state is coming in very close together, which, because Mongolia is a secular organization, so it should be separate. A Mongolian state should not be involved in ranking, as they try to do now, in the ranking of lamas, nominating. So actually, in reality, it is not the religion, a state is coming to religion. Actually, in Mongolian people, the religion is coming to the state. So they can have very strong impact on the way the state decisions is made, which we don't want. So we need to learn how it is organized in mature democracies, and we should be also having the politicians out of this non-political, non-government organizations. That's the dilemma. But I don't think they will adopt this law because it will make them unemployed after they are not winning the next election. So the politicians go either to politics or the so-called NGOs and come back, and this confusion, this mixture makes the country really in such a situation. We kind of losing the voice of people because the NGOs do not represent the people, which is the substantial part and parcel of the democratic society. That's very unfortunate.
And so moving on to our final topic is addressing the draft amendment law to the General Administration's law. So the amendment is opposed by a number of experts and lawyers. So who is this law benefiting? Who exactly is opposing this? And why is it being drafted and submitted to Parliament?
It was 2000 when they have adopted this law, General Administration law. And because this law there is a administration court. What this court and all these things were doing is, since 2000, people had the chance to sue the government agencies from top level to lowest level. Even in Hural, in the Horo, the smallest administrative unit, if their decisions goes against my interests or offense, right? So I go to the court, and I go to administration court. And for example, I think 90% almost of administration court cases were people coming with to the court, administration court, that I was fired or kicked out from my job, sacked from my job illegally. So in particular in Mongolia, when every time the government is changed, they replace public officers, you know, sometimes the whole ministries they change, which unfortunately creates very weak institutions of government. But those people go to the administration court, and what happens? Sometimes administration court says that yes, he was dismissed illegally. So he goes back to his positions, which he had lost or fired 2 years ago. Not only he goes back, but he is paid for the time when he had no job, the same salary that he was receiving. Billions of turiks are paid from the budget for this sort of decisions. And it's, of course, very harmful to budget in general, and it is also harmful to ordinary people who pay taxes. So it's one. The second, the decisions that the administration court makes sometimes goes against the interest of political figures. So what they have decided to do, they decided to cut off all this, even administration, general administration, law, and the general administration, this court. In Mongolia, we are a combination of common and civic laws. We partially also take mostly German system. In Germany, there is administration, or German speaking on it, also Austria, they have administration court, where the sort of court that these procedures go on. Here, now they say that what happens if I need to go to the court? Which court I should go about this decision of the government? Now this new law said you go to the constitutional court, which makes things even worse. Why? Say we have 9 members in the constitutional court. 3 of them is nominated or initiated by president, 3 by parliament, 3 by our court system. But the court, all heads of our courts, jurisdictions, all are nominated by president. So president kind of in the constitutional court have 6 votes out of 9. So say the government decision is sent to the, not to the administration court, which they're going to abolish. It goes to constitutional court. And the constitutional court, what is their job? They just check whether any decisions are violating or not the constitution of Mongolia. If they say that yes, this decision is violating the constitution, and they have as severe as possible punishment. So what they can do is, oh yes, this decision is against the constitutions of Mongolia. So what they do with the government, they dismiss the government. Logically, it means that the president, whoever, within our today's structure, they can resign every government anytime they want. That's somebody will bring the case to the court, constitutional court. They will say, oh, it's against the constitutions. Then the government is dismissed. So that will make even worse our unstable government. You know, since the revolution 1990, the government has changed 19 times, and on the average, one government survived for only 18 months. So it is not very good term. It means we don't have long-term stable policy, because every government comes to change everything. So this change don't play good role for the economy, for the governance, I believe. So we should go as it is now.
And so this law hasn't been officially approved. So what is the long-term effect on?
Officially, probably it will not be approved. If they will prove, it will raise several issues among the people. Well, the structure-wise also, as I just now described, the government can be very shaky. So hopefully it is not proved. If it is proved, then we need to think how we can approach the administration issues which is violating or to somebody's interests, etc. So we should have certain cushions where we should go. So I don't think it will be approved.
Well, thank you.
Okay.
Well, thank you for joining us for this week's DeFacto review. Please join us next week at the same time for another weekly roundup of the biggest stories shaping Mongolia.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.